Hello and welcome to another Heroes of the Storm quick tip. Today I wanted to talk about my current tank tiers for coordinated play. Just for reference, I usually play around the Nexus level, which is essentially Diamond Masters for coordinated play, and usually teams that have been playing together for a while, or at least people familiar with playing as a group. So that's where I'm coming from. Also, before we begin, I'd like to just apologize for dropping off the face of the earth. I started a new job, and it's not really work from home anymore, so as a result, I have not had a whole lot of time to record new content for this, or even like play the scrims necessary to get footage for the content. So, yeah, moving forward, I'm hoping to get a video out every week or two. I say week or two because saying a week is really generous, I would say, with my current schedule. And so, yeah, hopefully can keep that up. Definitely still want to keep doing this, so, stick around. I will continue to post content when I can. Anyway, so today, tank tiers. You can see I've labeled my general tiers, but quick reference, I think Mei and Anub have the most versatile kits right now. Stitches arguably as well, but the problem with Stitches is his CC is non-existent unless you count, Gorge. And obviously you have the Slam Slow, but that's not quite consistent when you're trying to start divers. Anyway, so for these two, the whole point is you can play them aggressively or defensively, and both of them get better at being aggressive as the game progresses. Obviously, as a Nubrak, your base kit is one of, if not the best tank kit in the game, because you have 2 stuns and a survival button that also, when talented, can either make you faster or just survive a whole lot longer in general. Like 40 spell armor, if you talent into it, is no joke against most comps. Or, like I said, you can run away faster with it, which is a lot like how ETC used to be. When Speed Metal was actually like pickable trait, pickable talent. And so Mei's kind of in the same boat. Her abilities let you go in as aggressively or play, into dive teams as much as you want. You can just cover your own team with a blizzard. You have a blind. You can give your team speed to get out. A Nubrak, you just save your stuns and stun them as they come in. You can cocoon someone to isolate them and make the team fight in your favor. Mei has a more situational one in Ice Wall, which you see quite often, but if you land it, you're probably going to win the team fight or be able to run away depending on what the situation is. So, in general, just looking at their base kits and their 10 spikes, like in terms of like how powerful they get as the game progresses, both these characters are the best of the best. Stitches, I would say, if you put him in S, I wouldn't really argue with you. But like I said, in general, I don't think you can just first pick him and expect to not get like dove to death in response. It takes a little more coordination just because Stitches can just hang around and annoy people and slow them, and you can kind of allow your team to get away. And again, Hook Gorge, one of the best like pick-off tools in the game, and even just hooks in general. Like hooks from out of vision, if you're good enough with them, especially once you hit your fishing hook, huge. You just game winning. And so the fact that you can do that a couple times every minute is just huge, and that's why he is the strongest of the like engage enable tanks. And that's why, like I said, you can put him up here if you want. Diablo, a lot more conditional. Varian's in the same boat. These two are essentially the same hero with different degrees of difficulty. Essentially, as Diablo, you have to dive in because that's just kind of how Shadow Charge itself works. But APOC gives you such a great setup that it's hard to argue with. And also, if you want to play Flame build, you can kind of play a slower paced game where you don't have to dive in until something looks like a sure kill or will cause enough confusion in the enemy team so you won't die instantly. Variant, similar, where it's like you really want to kill out of position heroes, but if you just have to run up into the enemy team, either you drafted him into an ideal spot, in which case they can't kill you and you always get a kill, and you'll live, and then you win the 5v4 hopefully. Excuse me. Um, or you kind of just play slow with banner, and again, you just look for out of position heroes, ideally with like a flanker from your off lane. Um, for example, say a Blaze, or even an Imperious, like someone who can flank and create their own threat, and then that kind of forces a split away from the group, and so then it's much easier to pick people off. Uther Muradin kind of also similar in the sense that like they both are just there to tank a bunch of cooldowns, and if people are out of position, they are going to double stun and kill you. Um, Obviously, Uther gets that slightly faster with Benediction, and Muradin has to wait till 20 for Rewind for the double stun kill. But, I mean, both of them are essentially like, you just run at your opponents, draw a lot of fire, heal up so you don't die, and then, just kill anyone that steps out of position. So they're all very similar in that role, but Uther takes a lot more risk because he doesn't have a jump like Muradin, so he has to actually watch his positioning pretty closely, also because of the longer cooldowns. The nice thing about Muradin is you can... The nice thing about Uther is you can cheat and die and still be very helpful to your team. So even if you take a risk and it doesn't pay off, you still might win the team fight because you have a healer for the next couple of seconds. And if the fight was already going your way before you died, then you'll probably still end up winning the fight. Also, Divine Shield. Just Divine Shield on any hyper carry hero like a Vala is just super free, you know? Tychus, another good one, enabling him to just stand there and turret, and the enemy team can't do anything into it. One of the most annoying things for like a heavy duty tank like a Stitches or Diablo, where you just can't really get away from him and you can't just stand there or you'll die. Very annoying. This is more for counter engages. Obviously, Garrosh can engage, but typically in coordinated play, what you see is a much better anchoring of vision spots, so it's harder to just run up and sneak on people. Same thing, you should be getting dismounted anytime you remotely are close to the enemy team by a ranged ability or even an auto attack. The exception is with Zarya, in which case put him up here because speed barrier Garrosh is incredibly hard to deal with, especially with his own unstoppable, and even more so with the cleansing shield, because then he essentially is double unstoppable and he can access anyone on your team at any point. And it's one of the most toxic things you can run into in coordinated play if you don't have a very clear game plan of how to counter it. And if you do, most of the time it'll still work because you're just not used to seeing it, and it's just a free kill if executed correctly basically every time. So yeah, if Zarya, put him up here. Otherwise, I like to see him more as a counter engager. Like, he's great when one of these heroes goes in, and you can isolate them with taunt, or slow them so they can't get away, and you can pick them off. So if you go in for an engage, and normally they'd walk out 20%, Garrosh makes sure they don't. And obviously, you know, if someone steps out too far and you get a throw, great. Hopefully they die. Blaze is the same deal. It's funny because as an offlaner, you often want to look for flanks and use slows to set up big E stuns. But if you just are staring, dancing over here on one side and the enemy teams are here, and you walk forward as Blaze and just try and oil E in, most of the time that's just going to get you annihilated or force you to pop bunker to not die. Like, when you see Blaze and you know where he is at all times, it's much harder to get anything from him. So Blaze is typically better in the current meta as a main tank that when one of these heroes wants to go in, you counter engage onto him. You like slow so your team can like reposition around them, and use E if they come in running after him, and you get hopefully a multiple stun. Or you go to whoever's being dove on and drop a bunker and save them, and then hopefully your team can like turn the fight from there, because even if they pop the bunker instantly, they had to waste cooldowns, and your teammate and yourself both get armor, so hopefully that's enough for you to turn the fight around. Johanna's weird. She doesn't have enough wave clear to be viable by herself anymore. Before you picked her for Blessed Shield picks and wave clear, since her wave clear is not particularly better, like I would say Blaze has better wave clear, for example, like since she's not the best wave clear tank, then her niche is kind of gone now. Like, Blessed Shield's not enough to justify picking her. Falling Sword, on the other hand, completely destroys some comps that rely on stun chains or diving one hero. And so if you draft her with Falling Sword into those comps, you're going to probably win the game, or at least make their burden of execution much, much higher. And at 20, Heaven's Sword is such a huge upgrade. It's, I would say it's more or less the equivalent of like Vile Infection on Nazebo. Like, you just get it, and you have such a huge teamfight edge. Unless you get deleted from the game before you get to press a button, it's so huge. And again, into the comps where you're already picking Johanna Falling Sword, it just makes it so those comps don't function anymore. Deathwing is weird. I probably have a personal bias here. He's probably down here for most people. But I think in World Breaker form, if you just teach your team to only play around the lava puddle, the slow and the area of effect is so big, it on certain maps it can completely turn off sections. Like on BOE, you can just turn off an entire angle of attack by just throwing in a choke. Just throw a lava puddle in a choke, hold your stun if they kind of run in past you, and you're good. I think the biggest mistake Deathwing players make, and you can see some of my other videos on this, is they either go in and try to absorb every cooldown and not die, which can work in the mid game, but later on, like say post 13 with some comps and post 16 with almost every comp, they'll have enough damage just to blow you up for free. Unless they drafted no Deathwing counters, in which case enjoy your free win. But assuming every single team you play against has at least one hero capable of like tearing off an armor plate right away, like a Tychus or a Greymane or a Nazebo, that's perfectly fine. You can play tank Deathwing into these comps. 2 is when it gets really dicey, and I wouldn't recommend, but 1 is fine. It's really not that big a deal. You just gotta learn to play around range. You're essentially a range tank. You're controlling the area with your abilities. You're not using your body, despite the fact that you're the biggest hero in the game would imply. Like, the only time you're controlling space with your body is if you're like trying to block like a Garrosh from engaging or a Blaze from engaging, or trying to block hooks from Stitches. Otherwise, you're using your abilities to just turn off areas of the map. And then at 16, if you have Q and conflagration, it's the same deal. Like, you're not, the key is like you're not the engage, you're a counter engage tool. You want your team to live long enough that you can destroy the enemy team for clumping and going in on your side of the map. And if you can do that, you're going to have a lot of success with Deathwing. And if not, you're going to be like, why did you recommend this? This hero's trash. These are all situational. Basically, Imperius just takes too much work and doesn't provide enough utility to justify himself outside of the off lane typically. Like, you can run him as a tank, but if you just miss Spear, he's worthless. And I know you can kind of make the same argument for, like, Diablo or Stitches or whatever, but, like, I just don't see the same value. He needs, like, one more buff and he's, like, back to here, like, where he's pretty good. Leo is essentially Johanna. Like, he has the same wave clear that she used to have, especially with the Neil Peasants change and how they changed his kit. So maybe AA Entomb Leo is actually like in this area. Like, I need to play with him more. But yeah, I would say he kind of fills the old Johanna role. And then Tyrael's problem has never been his kit and how he plays. It's always like the level of coordination you need for Tyrael to be good is too high for the majority of teams to justify playing him. But like Sanctification is still busted in half. Like, please play more Sanctification. And if your map includes a boss, like Cursed Hollow, Holy Ground is also busted in half. So, you know, again, look at the special tools this tank has and tell me like, oh, he's bad. Like, he's not. You just need to really focus on what he does well instead of playing him like a normal tank. He is much more of a support tank, and because no other tank plays like that, it's very weird to adjust to him. These heroes all suffer from the same issue of, like, I'd love to play them, but they're just worse copies of other heroes. Like, you can't tell me you'd rather have an ETC over a Nubrak. It just doesn't exist right now. Once he gets one more survivability buff, he can go back to here, because his kit's still good. But as it stands, he doesn't have a strong enough engage when he can just be popped for free. Like, if he goes in, unless he hits multiple people with a power slide or someone's way, way out of position, you're going to die anytime you slide in. It's just going to happen. Mal'Ganis, same problem. You're just going to get CC'd and killed. If the enemy team has no CC, he's here. But, I mean, what team is going to have no CC? Like, it's just, again, very rarely going to happen. The other thing is you really want to E out of bushes as one of your main engages if you can help it. And, again, that just kind of limits the number of maps you'd even want to try him on. And then, finally, Arthas. Same deal. Just not good enough. His base stats, his base talents just aren't good enough to justify playing him in the majority of situations. Every so often you'll run into one where he's the answer and you'll have fun, but usually if you think he's the answer, he's not. Again, there's a lot more like reasoning, but I'm trying to keep this short, and so far we're under 20 minutes, so I think we're going to cut it there. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them in the comments, and if you'd like me to follow up on any of these tanks in more detail, again, just let me know. Alright, thanks for watching. Appreciate it.